We are in Orlando, Florida, which is where Caylee Anthony was last seen alive on June 16th, 2008.
Over the next 31 days, her mother Casey says she was on a desperate search to find out where her daughter was. Only problem with the story was she didn't bother to tell her parents this. She didn't bother to tell her boyfriend. She didn't bother to tell any of her friends, and she certainly didn't bother to tell the police. She didn't let anyone know her daughter was missing. As a matter of fact, she spent a lot of time at bars. She was also living with her boyfriend and some other friends. And yet somehow she was found innocent of killing her daughter. We're going to go through it all, take you to the locations, pay our respects to Caylee. And we cordially invite you to come along.
Come along.
This is the Anthony family home where Casey and Caylee were living in June of 2008, along with Casey's dad George and mom Cindy Anthony. June 15th was Father's Day, and apparently there was a family argument here at the home that day. The very next day, this was the place where Caylee was last seen alive. Cindy said she left for work a bit before 7 that morning, and everyone else in the house was still asleep. George said Casey and Caylee left the house together at 12:50 that afternoon, then he left for work at 2:30. During the investigation, it was found Casey's phone continued to ping off the tower nearest the house throughout the afternoon, all the way up until 4:11 that afternoon. If George's testimony is true, then that means Casey must have taken Caylee right down the road and hid until her father left for work, then she would have returned home. However, there was activity on Casey's Facebook and MySpace account, and the person also checked an AOL Instant Messenger account, which apparently George had at the time, but Casey did not. This all happened on the home computer between 1:39 and 1:42 that afternoon. Was that George checking her accounts or accidentally on them on the home computer? Or was Casey actually still in the house? We don't know. Then at 2:51, when cell phone records showed George was at work, a search for foolproof suffocation was done on the home computer. Then just 5 seconds later, the person clicked on an article that gives advice on foolproof ways to die. The article said, poison yourself and then follow it up with suffocation and place a plastic bag over the head. Somehow, this was missed by investigators. They later admitted they had searched the computer's Internet Explorer browser, but not the Firefox browser, which was the one Casey mainly used. They missed more than 1,000 searches on the computer from that day, which meant prosecutors at trial did not know about almost 99% of the search history records from the day Caylee disappeared. There were also, at different times, searches investigators did find for making weapons out of household products, how to make chloroform, and neck breaking. At 4:11, Casey's phone pings show her leaving the house. There was actually no activity on her cell phone that afternoon between 4:25 and 6:31. At that point, she made her way to Tony Lazzaro's apartment, a man she had met a few weeks earlier through Facebook.
We're at Tony Lazzaro's former apartment. This is where Casey Anthony stayed for the 31 days that Caylee disappeared for.
She stayed in number 708 right up there behind us. Now, Tony lived here with several roommates. They all said that Casey was just a fun party girl. She fit in very well with their group of friends. They liked to go out partying. She helped clean, cook around the house for the students. But Tony said she didn't act strange at all. It's like nothing was different. She never talked about Caylee being missing, and she just went on about life as if nothing was going on with her daughter. Tony's former apartment is right up these stairs here, number 708. It has a balcony area with a nice view of the lake behind it. This is where Casey lived for 31 days after Caylee disappeared. Some friends of Casey said she had wanted to give Caylee up for adoption as she didn't feel she was ready to be a mom. She even had a friend who wanted to adopt Caylee, but her mother Cindy did not want her to do that. Despite that, people around her said she was actually a good mother. She didn't let anyone smoke or drink around her daughter. Tony said they once hung out at the pool here at the complex, and Caylee got a little too close to the edge of the pool, at which point Casey went and talked to her, telling her to stay away from the edge. When she arrived here to move in with Tony on June the 16th, she did not have Caylee with her.
On June 16th, 2008, which was the last day Caylee was seen alive, Casey was seen on surveillance video with Tony in this store right here.
The store was called Blockbuster Video at the time. It's obviously something else now. Now, when they were in there, they were walking arm in arm, and they decided to rent two movies. One of those was a movie by the name of Untraceable. In that film, a serial killer live posts victims on the internet, and he seems to be untraceable to police. Blockbuster surveillance video from just before 8 p.m. the night Caylee disappeared shows Casey and Tony walking arm in arm through the store, picking out the two videos. Caylee is not with them. The other movie they chose to rent was a movie by the name of Jumper. It tells the story of a mom who abandons her 5-year-old son. They headed to Tony's apartment to watch the movies that evening. Casey then spent the next month doing things around the apartment during the day, as well as getting a tattoo of the words Bella Vita, which is Italian for beautiful life, and heading out to party at night. Tony was a party promoter at the time. She enjoyed going to the parties he was promoting, hanging out with him, and even entering a hot body contest just 4 days after Caylee disappeared. During the month Casey was here after Caylee's disappearance, she did not spend much time with her parents, although she did come back to the neighborhood on June 18th to borrow a shovel from a man by the name of Brian Berner, who was one of her parents' neighbors. She told Berner she wanted to dig up a bamboo root. She brought the shovel back about an hour later. Tony testified during the trial that he and Casey came here together on June 23rd and broke into the shed here to steal gas cans because her car was out of gas. George called the police about the break-in, but he saw Casey here later that day and asked her about them, and she told him they were in her car. As he started walking toward her car, she ran past him and grabbed them out of the trunk. When her parents asked where Caylee was, she would say she was with a babysitter by the name of Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, who she called Zanny, the nanny. At one point, they told her they needed to see Caylee, so Casey agreed. But then she called them back later and said Zanny had been in a car wreck and wasn't able to bring Caylee over. On June 30th, workers at a local business called a tow company and said an unknown vehicle had been parked in their parking lot for a couple days.
Casey's abandoned white Sunfire was found here in the Amscott parking lot.
Amscott is a financial services store. They do money orders, cash advances, check cashing, that kind of stuff. Now, her vehicle was parked right next to this dumpster right here. We're not sure if it was over there somewhere, but more than likely it was in this spot right here. Now, the reason for that probably was to try to cover up any kind of smell that might have been coming from inside of the vehicle. Casey later claimed she had run out of gas again and chose to leave her car here. She had Tony pick her up, and she told him her father would deal with the car for her. She apparently did not bother to mention this to her father, so it was eventually towed.
On July 15th, 2008, George and Cindy Anthony pulled into that police impound right there to pick up Casey's white Pontiac Sunfire.
This is a place called Johnson's Wrecker Service, and when George and Cindy arrived, he said they began to make their way toward that white vehicle. I'm trying to stay back from the road a little bit. It's very, very loud. So he walked towards the car and he said he smelled a horrible, putrid smell. He was a former police officer, so he knew the smell of death. He said he had been around it some as a police officer, and he said that is the smell that hit his nose as he walked toward the car. He even said he whispered a prayer, God, please don't let this be Caylee or Casey in the trunk of this vehicle. During the trial, George testified that he was confident it was the smell of a decomposing human body. He said, that particular smell, whenever you smell it, it's something that you never forget. It's a very distinct odor. A man by the name of Simon Birch was operations manager for the wrecker service at the time. He took a look at the car while it was still in the lot. He said, I put my hand up to the glass to shield the sun and looked through the windows. At that point, I did notice a fairly strong odor emanating from the vehicle. The instant flash in my mind was, whoa, I know what that smells like. He said he'd been in the towing industry for 3 decades and he knew the difference between the smell of garbage and human decomposition. He said when he opened the car door with George, the smell came out very instantly, very potent. It was eye-opening. In the back of my mind, I said to myself, that's the smell of decomposition. When George opened the trunk, he saw a bag of trash and maggots. He said he drove the car home with all the windows open because it would not have been possible to ride in the car with the windows up due to the smell. Not long after he got back home, he left for work at a new job he was starting that day. Cindy told him she'd get in touch with their daughter. That afternoon, she went on a search for Caylee. She was worried about that smell and the fact that she had not seen her granddaughter in a month. She found one of Caylee's friends who took her to Tony's apartment. She forced Caylee to come home. Caylee eventually said she too had not seen her daughter in a month, and she said Zanny the nanny had apparently kidnapped her. After hearing this, Cindy called 911.
911, what's your emergency? I called a little bit ago. The deputy sheriff said I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. Her mother finally admitted that she's been missing.
Okay, what is
here now?
Okay, what is the address that you're calling from?
We're talking about a 3-year-old little girl. So my daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her.
Your daughter admitted that the baby is where?
But the babysitter took her a month ago that my daughter's been looking for. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. And she just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Caylee, Caylee, Anthony.
When police arrived, Caylee told them the same story she had told her mother, that Zanny the nanny had Caylee.
Police asked Caylee, where does Zanny the nanny live? And she led them right here.
This is 301 Hillside. You see the number on the building there. This was the first actually of 3 different locations she took them to as potential places where Zenaida lived.
They arrived here close to 5 a.m. and figured out this was not the place where Zanny lived. So, Caylee gave them another address to go check out. At the second spot, Caylee took investigators to on the search for Zanny the nanny at Sawgrass Apartments.
She actually told investigators she dropped Caylee off at that apartment right there. It's apartment number 210. The problem with this was apartment 210 had been sitting empty for several months. It was actually being used as a model apartment. It had been remodeled and everything since the previous tenants were thrown out.
Once they figured out this wasn't Zanny's home either, they left and headed to another location.
The third and final location Caylee took police to was this gated retirement home community.
At this point, police realized they were being taken on a wild goose chase. They took Caylee back home at 6:45 in the morning. Later that day, police tried to figure out where she worked. Caylee started up her next wild goose chase. We're at Universal Studios. This is where Caylee told investigators she worked.
She actually brought investigators here, took them around Universal. She was saying hi to people she didn't even know, acting like she knew them. She even took them to an area that supposedly her office location was. Eventually, she had to admit she didn't even work here. The crazy thing is, this isn't some new thing she came up with just for the police. She had been telling her parents she worked here for quite a few years as well.
After this, Caylee was arrested and charged with making false official statements, child neglect, and obstructing an investigation. A massive search begins for Caylee, but no one seems to know where she could be. Then on August 11th, a meter reader by the name of Roy Kronk calls the police to say he saw a bag with a skull and bones in it in the woods here. No one shows up, so he calls again on the 12th and again on the 13th, when finally a police officer by the name of Richard Kane shows up to check it out. But he told Kronk the ground was too wet and apparently saw a snake in the area, and he was scared of snakes, so he left without doing a proper check. Kane was later fired from the Orange County Sheriff's Office because of this. We're at the spot where Caylee Anthony was found on December 11th, 2008.
She was found by some sort of utility worker. I believe that he was a meter reader. He had to use the restroom, so he stepped off into the woods in here to use the restroom. When he went back in there, he saw the body laying down there. That was 17 feet, 4 inches from where I'm standing right here, back to where the body was found. Now, some people wonder, how was it not found before then? Which is a reasonable question. However, we have heard that this whole area was way more filled in with trees that had to be chainsawed down as they were doing the search of the area for any kind of evidence. So it was much more filled in, was the first point. Second point is there's no sidewalk on this side of the road. Now on that side of the road, there's a sidewalk, so people would have been walking by over there. However, on this side of the road, there is no sidewalk, so people would not have been walking by right in this area here. But it is not far from the Anthony household.
4 months later, on December 11th, 2008, Kronk headed back out there again to relieve himself. As police searched this area, they found some of her remains in a trash bag, and they found duct tape hanging from her hair. It was a unique brand of duct tape. They also found more of it at the Anthony family home, including on one of the gas cans. Over the next few days, they found more of her bones scattered in the woods. Some of the bones had been chewed on by animals. They found a Winnie the Pooh blanket that was a match with the bedding found in Caylee's room. They also found a laundry bin that was a match with one found in the garage at the family home. When police searched photos from the family, they also found a photo of her wearing the shirt she was found in. There was at one point a 6-foot tall cross in memory of Caylee here. However, several years back when they were filming for a TV show, George and Cindy took it down, as well as removing other things from the memorial site. George said at the time he didn't want to come back here again. On April 13th, 2009, prosecutors announced they were seeking the death penalty for Caylee. She was charged with several things, including first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and providing false information to law enforcement. She was not found guilty on the more serious charges and found guilty on several counts of providing false information. After the trial, many people were angry with the jury's verdict. Someone came up with an idea to require parents to notify law enforcement of the death or disappearance of a child. It would be a felony if a parent didn't do this. Several states, including Florida, began to pass versions of this law, which became unofficially known as Caylee's Law. Caylee has, for the most part, been in hiding since the trial. She was credited with the time served and let out of jail pretty quickly. She eventually moved to West Palm Beach to live with a private eye, Pat McKenna, who was a key part of the O.J. Simpson case and was also a consultant for Caylee's case. This is where Caylee Anthony lived for many years in West Palm Beach, Florida.
It was sold very recently, and apparently the new owner decided they didn't want to keep that house anymore. The house has been torn down, and they're just going to build a new one here soon. On Google Maps, you'll notice right in this area here is where she used to park her vehicle, and there's a nice view of the waterway down there. We're now going to show you a picture of Google Maps. That was Caylee's car parked up front, and that is what the house looked like when it was still standing. The way we were able to find this address is that Caylee actually applied to run her own photography business and put down this address as her home address at the time.